government shutdown looming as Congress battles over a spending bill. President-elect Donald Trump urging Republicans to reject that bill. A measure put forth by House Speaker Mike Johnson would have funded the government through mid-March. That measure included disaster aid, healthcare policy extensions, and a pay raise for lawmakers. But Trump pushing for a streamlined spending bill and called for the abolishing of the debt ceiling in a phone interview with NBC this morning. Joining us now with more, we've got Gardner, Stifel's chief Washington policy strategist. Brian, great to have you here. So in your notes, you said you still think the odds of a shutdown are low. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, kind of tacking on to Brian Sozzi's interview with Vlad, I think we can, put up something where, betting on Robinhood, whether the government's going to shut down and whether the debt ceiling is going to go away. I think the odds of a shutdown are still relatively low. It doesn't look good right now because there's dysfunction, there's disagreement, a deal has fallen apart, and so it's tough to see the end game. I think what will happen over the next couple of days, probably getting us into early 25, is a series of short-term extensions without an actual shutdown. So, yeah, it doesn't look great right now, but I think a shutdown is not my base case scenario. Government remaining open is.
Brian, why are you confident that we will reach some sort of extension?
Because no one wants a shutdown. There's a lot of disagreement up on the Hill about what the pathway forward is. But going into the holidays, no one wants the optics of shutting down the government. And there will be people out there who say it's not a big deal. And I would say for markets, it's not a big deal. We can get into that separately. But it's not a big deal for the country. We can get through it. It doesn't impact the economy. We're going into the holidays where there are going to be federal workers, and those include troops, who don't get paid for a couple weeks. And so the optics of a young Marine Corps enlisted man or woman who has, a spouse and kids and having trouble paying bills at the holidays is just a very bad optic for Washington. So I think the default will be keep the negotiations going. If they have to extend government spending for a week, they'll do it. They'll just keep kicking the can down the road until they eventually can get to a deal that lasts a longer period of time, whether that's March, whether it's even longer into the fiscal year.
What is the nature of the conversation from the likes of President-elect Trump, but also Elon Musk on X telling people to call their representatives? What does that tell you about the dynamic that voters can expect to see and investors can expect to see in the 4 years ahead in this Trump administration?
We have been through efforts in the past to reduce government spending, to make government more efficient. The Reagan administration did it. The Clinton administration did it. But those efforts occurred in an era pre-social media, pre-internet. And I think with the Doge, what you have is two individuals who are very charismatic, very present on social media, and are able to drive the conversation nationally. Facts don't always play into the calculus. I mean, there were some misrepresentations about the substance of the bill that's not going to pass, but that's secondary. It drives the conversation, and so lawmakers are going to have to be very careful to avoid potential landmines that are going to be all over the battlefield, the political battlefield in the coming year regarding spending and just the general way that government operates.
When you take a look at how much pressure House Speaker Mike Johnson is under, lots of questions about whether or not he's going to be able to remain in his position, what that's going to look like here under the Trump administration. What's your base case there?
It's a toss-up at this point. Johnson was going into the spending debate in a precarious position just because of vote math, right? Republicans are going to start the year with a 219, 215 majority. The Speaker needs to be elected on the House floor. He needs 218 votes, so Johnson can only lose one vote. And we have seen this play out in January of 2023 and October of 2023 when Johnson replaced then Speaker McCarthy. You already have one Republican, Tom Massey of Kentucky, who said he's going to vote for somebody else. So we're at 218. That means Johnson cannot lose anybody else. And my gut tells me, without knowing anything specific, my gut tells me there are other House Republicans who are going to vote for somebody else or against Johnson. And he's going to fail to get 218. and we're going to go through a couple of rounds in the first weekend of January, just like we did 2 years ago, trying to figure out a speaker. And then it really, because Trump is the incoming president, it's going to be up to him, I think, to actually choose somebody and get Republicans to fall in line behind his pick for speaker.
Final minute, Brian. You mentioned the market doesn't really care about the shutdown, but they certainly care about the Fed signaling fewer rate cuts to come in 2025. That's what led the sell-off. How likely do you think it is that Trump is going to increase his threats against Fed Chair Jay Powell if we do continue to see pressure in the market as he enters the White House?
You know, so he's been back and forth on this, right? During his first term, he threatened to fire Powell. He's backed away from it more recently. I think over a fear that it could upset the markets. But yesterday we had 1,100 point sell-off in the Dow, and there's nothing that Trump wants to see less than the markets reversing themselves and selling off as a signal of potential weakness or lack of confidence in the government that's coming in. And I think that increases the chances that Trump will once again pivot and threaten Jay Powell's job. Now, we can get into why I don't think there's a great chance that he is actually going to be removed. There are legal issues here that I don't want to bore your watchers to death with. So I'm skeptical that he's actually going to be removed. But I think the odds of a Trump threat to fire Powell in the wake of yesterday's Fed announcement and the market reaction to that announcement have increased materially.
All right, Brian, always great to get your insight. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, guys.